The car wreck left me paralyzed and alone. Family vanished, no calls, no visits, whispering I was better off. Years of rehab built my quiet empire, netting millions. When inheritance rumors leaked, they slithered back with fake tears, until I slammed the door with proof of their cruelty. The ceiling of the ICU was the same beige as the carpet in my parents' house. And for the first 3 days, I kept thinking about that. Not about my spine, not about the prognosis the attending had delivered in the flat, careful language of someone who had said this sentence many times, but about that specific shade of beige and what it meant that the color of institutional helplessness was also the color of home. My name is Christy Cannon. I was 29 years old when a delivery truck ran a red light on Morse Road and took everything I thought I knew about my life and rearranged it permanently. And what I remember most from the first week is the ceiling, and then the silence, and then understanding that the silence was a message. My mother came on day 2. Beatrice Cannon was a woman who wore her emotions the way some people wear good jewelry, selectively, in public, where they could be admired. She sat beside my bed for 40 minutes with her hands folded in her lap and said things like the doctors are very hopeful and you just need to stay positive and we're all praying for you. And when she left, she kissed me on the forehead with the specific quality of someone concluding an obligation. My father James came with her and stood near the window and did not sit down, which I had learned in 29 years meant he had already made a decision he didn't want to discuss. He said, "You're tough, Christy. You'll figure it out," and followed my mother out of the room. Tiffany texted, "Thinking of you, stay strong," with a small red heart emoji. She lived 40 minutes from the hospital. She did not come. Jake called once on day 4 from what sounded like a bar. "They're saying you might not like, is it permanent?" he asked, and I said the doctors thought so, and he said damn in a long, exhaled way, and then said he'd come see me soon, and I said okay, and neither of us believed it. Soon turned out to be a unit of time that did not correspond to any interval I had previously understood. There is a version of the story I could tell in which I described the rehabilitation in detail, the parallel bars, the chair, the learning of a body that had become a different proposition than it used to be. But that version is not this one, and the reason is that the rehabilitation was mine, specifically mine, earned inch by inch over 14 months at the Dodd Rehabilitation Hospital in Columbus, and then in the adapted apartment I rented in Clintonville with the wide doorways and the roll-in shower. And I do not want to reduce it to something illustrative. I will say only that I worked in the way that people work when they have been left alone with nothing but the work, when there is no one coming for Sunday dinner and no voice on the other end of the phone asking how it went today, and that the work became, over time, the most reliable thing in my life. I learned what I could do. I found out the list was longer than anyone had suggested. My family's disappearance was not dramatic. That was the thing about it that took me longest to process. I kept expecting a scene, a confrontation, some legible break that I could point to and say there, that is where it ended. Instead, there was a gradual reduction. Beatrice called less. Then she called on holidays, briefly. Then she called on my birthday and said she'd been meaning to visit, but things had been so busy, and I said I understood, and things continued to be busy indefinitely. James did not call at all after the first year, which was not a change so much as a formalization of his usual distance. Tiffany got married and sent me a wedding announcement, not an invitation, an announcement, the kind you send to people you are technically still related to, but do not expect to attend. Jake moved to Phoenix and became the kind of person whose life I knew about only through the occasional social media post that I no longer checked. I heard things through the network of mutual acquaintances that still existed in the faint background of my Columbus life. I heard that Beatrice had told someone at church that she didn't know how to handle Christy's situation, that it was too hard for the family, that Christy was better off in her own space. I heard that Tiffany had told a cousin that she didn't want her kids around disability, that she didn't know how to explain it to them. I heard Jake had told someone at a bar, perhaps the same bar from which he had called me on day 4, that his sister had had an accident, and it was pretty much a whole thing. I logged all of this, not immediately. In the beginning, I logged it the way you log a wound. You just know where it is and how much it costs to touch it. Later, I became more systematic, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The business started as problem solving, which is how, I think, the best businesses start. I had been a UX designer before the accident, freelance, reasonably well regarded in the mid-sized Columbus market, the kind of professional who was always busy but never quite flourishing, perpetually one large client away from the version of the career she wanted. The accident did not change my ability to design. It changed my relationship to the physical office, to the casual meetings, to the industry events where a significant fraction of new client relationships were formed, which meant it changed my access to the market in ways that I found, at first, straightforwardly maddening. So I rebuilt the access differently. I hired a business development person before I could afford one, a woman named Dana who worked on commission and had the specific gift of making people feel, on a call, that they were about to be involved in something worth their time. I built a remote-first studio model 18 months before remote-first became the consensus assumption of the industry. I brought on 2 designers I had known before the accident and 2 I had not, all of them talented, none of them particularly concerned with where I did the work or how I moved through the space where I did it. We worked on healthcare interfaces first, which was not a market I had planned for but which turned out, given my recent expertise in navigating healthcare systems as a patient, to be a market I understood with an unusual specificity. The studio's name was Cleargrain. By year 3, we had 12 clients. By year 5, 28. By year 7, I had turned down 2 acquisition offers and accepted a third, structured as a partial acquisition with retained equity, from a healthcare technology firm in Austin that valued us at a number that I will not state directly, but that contained more digits than I had previously associated with anything bearing my name. I had not set out to build something worth that number. I had set out to work, to have the work be good, to not need anyone who had decided they didn't need me. The number arrived anyway. I put it in accounts I managed quietly, in a condo in the short north that I'd bought 2 years earlier and furnished without consulting anyone, in a portfolio that a financial advisor in Dublin, Ohio, managed with a professionalism I appreciated, in part because she knew exactly what I had and never suggested I call my family. The rumors started, I would later piece together, through an old acquaintance named Renee Galloway, who had been a peripheral figure in my Columbus social life before the accident and remained a peripheral figure after, which meant she existed in that zone of familiarity where people feel entitled to speculate about you without feeling obligated to speak to you directly. Renee knew someone who knew Dana. Dana, who was loyal but not discreet in the way that people who are very good at their jobs are sometimes not discreet, had mentioned in passing, at an industry event, that Cleargrain's acquisition had been life-changing for Christie. Renee took this information and fed it into the family-adjacent social network with the efficiency of someone who has always understood that information is currency. Within 3 weeks of that conversation, I received a Facebook message from Tiffany. I had not spoken to Tiffany in 2 years. The message said, "Hey, stranger. I've been thinking about you so much lately, I feel terrible that we've lost touch. Can we catch up?" 2 days after that, a text from Jake. "Yo, Christy, been a minute, how are things?" A week after that, a voicemail from my mother, in a voice that had modulated itself into something warmer and more uncertain than her usual register. "Christy, sweetheart, it's Mom. I know it's been, well, I know we've had some distance, and I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I'd really love to see you. I'd really love for us all to get together. Call me when you get a chance." I listened to the voicemail twice. Then I opened a document I had been keeping on my laptop for 4 years, a plain text file with a name that would have been cryptic to anyone who opened it accidentally, record, and I added a new entry with the date and a brief notation. Voicemail, Beatrice, approx. 3 weeks after Renee G. event. I had been keeping the document since year 2. It had 214 entries. They came in person on a Saturday in October, all 4 of them, which was either coordination or coincidence, and given the evidence I was inclined toward coordination. I had agreed to the visit because I wanted them in a room. I had thought about this moment, not as revenge. I want to be precise about this, because the word revenge implies a passion I had largely finished feeling, but as a conclusion, a formal end to something that had been technically open for 7 years. I wanted the open thing closed. I made coffee. I set out the good cups, which sounds like a small hospitality and was, in fact, a deliberate choice. I wanted them to see the condo, the art on the walls, the bookshelves, the life I had built in a space that was mine, and that contained no evidence of having been made for or with anyone else. Beatrice arrived first, in a good coat, with the expression of a woman who had rehearsed her entrance. She looked around the living room and something crossed her face. Not guilt, exactly, more the specific recalibration of someone updating a mental picture that had been badly out of date. She opened her arms, and I let her hug me, and felt the familiar sensation of being held by someone who was performing comfort rather than offering it, the pressure slightly too deliberate, the duration slightly too considered. "It's so good to see you," she said. "It's so good, you look wonderful." "Thank you," I said. James came in behind her and shook my hand, which was how my father had always greeted me after about age 12, with a handshake, as if we were colleagues who respected each other at a professional distance. He looked at the condo with a different expression than Beatrice, something more like calculation, the logistics processor assessing the situation, though to be fair to him, that was how James looked at most things. Tiffany came in saying my name as if it were a greeting in itself, twice, Christy, Christy, and held my face in both hands for a moment in a gesture I recognized from her social media, where she used it in photos with her children to signal demonstrative affection. Her husband had not come, which I noted. Jake came last, taller than I remembered, with the look of someone who had not entirely prepared for this conversation, and was hoping the general warmth of the occasion would carry him through. We sat. I poured coffee. There was a period of approximately 15 minutes during which the conversation was entirely surface. The condo, Columbus, whether I knew that such and such restaurant had closed, Tiffany's children, Jake's job in Phoenix, things that existed in the verbal register of people who are delaying the thing they came to say. Then Beatrice set down her coffee cup and said, "Christy, I want you to know that your father and I have been doing a lot of reflecting. I know that after the accident, well, we didn't handle things perfectly, and I want you to know that we know that, and we're sorry." She said it the way people say things they have practiced, not insincerely exactly, but with a smoothness that revealed the drafting, the revision, the prior delivery to a mirror or a spouse. Her eyes were wet in the way that eyes can be wet as a kind of emotional weather without corresponding to a specific feeling. "We love you," Tiffany said on cue. "We always loved you. We didn't know how to handle what happened." "It was a lot for all of us," Jake said, and had the grace, at least, to look uncomfortable with the sentence as it left his mouth. I let the silence sit for a moment. Outside, the short north was doing what it did on Saturday mornings. The foot traffic, the coffee shop lines, the mild, pleasant noise of a neighborhood that did not know or care about this particular conversation. "I appreciate you saying that," I said. Beatrice looked relieved. I watched it move across her face like weather. "I want to share something with you," I said, "while I have you all here." I got up and went to my desk. The folder was already open on my laptop. I had arranged this in advance, the document accessible, the relevant entries loaded. I also took my phone from the desk. I had, over the course of the past 4 years, saved voicemails. Not all of them, but enough. I had learned, early in the long quiet of building something alone, that the things you think you will remember you often don't, and the things you want to forget have a way of staying. I sat back down. "This is a log I've been keeping since 2017, I said. I did not open the laptop yet. 214 entries, dates, contacts, content, starting with your last visit to the hospital, Mom, which was March 2017. I looked at Beatrice. "You came twice in 6 weeks, then not again." Beatrice opened her mouth. "I'm not finished," I said, which was a sentence I had never said to my mother before, and which arrived in the room with a weight that surprised even me. "I have texts from all 4 of you, some from before you knew about the acquisition, some from after. I have a voicemail from you, Mom, from 3 weeks ago, which arrived approximately 18 days after Renee Galloway mentioned my name at a UX conference." I have a Facebook message from Tiffany and a text from Jake that arrived within 10 days of the same event. Tiffany said, "That's not." "I have a recording," I said, "from Aunt Carol's birthday in 2019, which I was not invited to, but which someone who was there recorded on their phone and sent me, because they thought I should hear it. In which you, Mom, tell Aunt Carol that Christy is better off keeping to herself, that it's too much for the family, that disability is hard for everyone, and you've all had to grieve in your own way." The room had changed temperature. I noticed it as a physical fact. "I've grieved in my own way too," I said. I said it without particular feeling, not because I had no feeling, but because the feeling was old and had been converted, over many years of work, into something more structural and less hot. "I want you to understand that I'm not angry. I made my peace with what happened between us a long time ago. But I want you to understand also that I know exactly what this visit is, and I know exactly what it isn't, and I am not available for the version of this family that requires me to accept a revised history." Beatrice said very quietly, "We're your family, Christy." "You were," I said, "and then you weren't. And now you've decided you'd like to be again, and I'm telling you that decision is not only yours to make." James, who had said nothing since the handshake, said, "What does that mean practically?" I had always respected my father's directness, even when it was cold. "It means I'll be polite at Christmas if circumstances require it. It means I'll send cards. It means I will not be hostile. But it means that the conversation you came here to have, whatever it was, about the future, about how things might be different, that conversation is not going to happen today or any other day. Because I watched you decide I was too much, and I've spent 7 years becoming someone who is not interested in being managed by that decision." No one spoke for a moment. Then Jake said, with the unvarnished quality that had always been his least worst trait, "Is this about the money?" "No," I said. "The money is mine. It will stay mine. What you do with that information is up to you." I looked at him steadily. "But if you're asking whether what I just said is about the money, the answer is that the money is entirely irrelevant to it. You were gone before there was any money. What I'm telling you is about before the money. The money just made you come back." Jake nodded slowly, the nod of a man absorbing something he already half knew. Tiffany was crying. I was not unmoved by this. I want to be honest about that. I was not made of glass. I had not stopped being capable of being affected by my sister's tears. But I had learned, over 7 years, to distinguish between what a feeling was and what it required of me, and Tiffany's tears, however real they might have been in that moment, did not require me to provide the comfort of saying never mind. I handed her a box of tissues from the side table, and she took them and held them without using them, which felt accurate. "I think we're done for today," I said. Beatrice stood first. She had the quality of a woman gathering herself after something, straightening her coat, re-establishing the composure that was her primary public instrument. She said, "I hope you'll think about what family means, Christy." And I understood this was the closing argument she'd prepared, and I let her deliver it because it cost me nothing. "I have thought about it," I said. "For 7 years, I know exactly what it means." They left in the order they'd come, Beatrice first, then James, then Tiffany, then Jake, who paused at the door and looked back at me with the expression of someone who might, given enough time and a different history, have apologized in a way that had some content. He didn't. He raised one hand in something between a wave and a concession, and then he was gone. I sat in the quiet for a long time after they left. The coffee cups were on the table. The good cups, all 4 of them, and my own, and the afternoon was doing what October afternoons do in Columbus. The light going amber and lateral, the trees on the street outside already past their best color, the city settling into the particular stillness of a weekend running out. I thought about calling Dana, who would have wanted to hear about this, who would have made some sharp, satisfied comment that would have made me laugh. I thought about calling my friend Margaret, who had been in my life since year 3 of the rehabilitation, and was the kind of person who held information carefully and gave it back to you in a more useful form. I thought about the work on my desk, which was still the most reliable thing in my life, the thing that had not let me down on any of the days when other things had. I did not call anyone immediately. I cleared the cups. I rinsed them at the sink, the good cups, the ones I had set out deliberately, and dried them and put them back in the cabinet. I went to my desk and closed the log, all 214 entries, the record of what had happened and in what order and what it had cost. And I saved it again, because I was still the kind of person who saved things. Then I opened the current project file, a patient intake redesign for a regional hospital system in Cleveland. And I worked for 2 hours in the amber October light, and the work was good, and it was mine. And outside the short north moved through the end of its Saturday with complete indifference to anything that had been said or not said in my living room. That indifference was fine with me. I had built my life inside it. I knew, by then, exactly what it was worth.